On this day, Dreamworld would experience a disaster that would mark one of its darkest days in existence. When you hear the name Dreamworld, do you think of family fun, thrilling coasters, and splashy water rides in one of Australia's most popular theme parks? However, that wasn't the case. One of the rides at Dreamworld was called Thunder River Rapids. It was a water ride that took a brief but exciting plunge into the river. Riders sat in a round raft that could hold up to 6 people. That raft floated along a watery channel, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, but always wet and noisy. The ride was meant to be family-friendly. Visitors as young as 2 years old were allowed on it as long as they met the height requirement. Because it moved at a moderate speed and allowed young children to ride, many guests saw it as one of the safer attractions of the park. However, that belief was shattered not long after. At around 2:20 p.m. local time, the ride experienced a sudden malfunction. A large water pump that helped maintain water flow had failed. When that pump stopped working, the water level in parts of the ride dropped quickly. One raft near the unloading area became stuck because the water level was too low for it to move properly. About a minute later, another raft carrying 6 people approached from behind.
The victims have been identified as Kate Goodchild, her brother Luke Dorset, his partner Ruzi Aragi, and a 42-year-old woman. An empty raft became stuck, blocking the final stop of the raft that the deceased were riding in. The Gold Coast Bulletin reported that the victim's raft hit the empty raft and flipped. 2 of the victims were flung out of the raft into the water, while the 2 others were trapped under the raft.
With the first raft stranded, the second raft collided with it. The impact caused the moving raft to lift and flip backwards. It rose almost vertically and struck the ride's mechanical conveyor system. 4 adults on board were fatally injured in the collision and the crushing that followed. 2 children were thrown clear and survived. Emergency services were called immediately. Paramedics, police, and firefighters rushed to the scene. The 4 adults could not be saved. Authorities later described their injuries as severe and fatal.
Inside the police investigation into the Dreamworld tragedy, in this never-seen-before footage, police are simulating the horror on the Thunder River Rapids ride. They use mannequins weighing the same as the victims. They make the pump fail so the water level drops. The second raft crashes into the first. They're recreating the exact circumstance when 4 people were killed. Police are trying to make a second raft flip like it did that day, but it doesn't.
It was simply a matter of time. That time came on the 25th of October 2016.
That's the day Cindy Lowe and Kate Goodchild were killed in front of their young children, along with Kate's brother Luke Dorset and his long-term partner Ruzi Aragi on Dreamworld's most popular ride. A coroner scathing of Australia's largest theme park, saying he's surprised it didn't happen earlier.
The victims were 42-year-old Cindy Lowe, 32-year-old Kate Goodchild, 35-year-old Luke Dorset, and 38-year-old Ruzbeth Aragi. Dreamworld closed immediately after the incident. Police treated the ride area as a major investigation scene. The park announced it would remain closed while authorities examined what had gone wrong. The tragedy shocked Australia. It was widely described as the country's worst theme park disaster, a label that carried a heavy, painful weight. Outside the park entrance, the bright, colorful atmosphere was replaced with silence and grief. Flowers began to pile up against the gates. Strangers who had never met the victims stood there quietly, writing messages of sorrow and sympathy. News channels covered the story for days, but behind every broadcast was a deeper feeling that couldn't be explained away. A place meant for joy had become a symbol of grief. But how? The questions began almost immediately. How could a family raft ride cause such destruction? Why were there no systems in place to prevent an accident like this? Had warning signs been completely missed by the park management? In the months that followed, multiple investigations began. Workplace safety authorities examined maintenance records, mechanical systems, staff training, and emergency procedures. What unfolded during the investigations opened up everybody's eyes wide. The ride had experienced mechanical issues in the past. The water pump that failed on the day of the tragedy had malfunctioned before. There were also reports of problems with the conveyor belt system that lifted rafts out of the water. Investigators found that there were no automated water level sensors installed that would automatically shut down the ride if the water dropped too low. Experts later testified that such a system could have prevented the accident.
A systemic failure by Dreamworld in relation to all aspects of safety.
Families have waited a long time for these findings. The 6-week inquest wrapped up more than a year ago. Coroner James McDougall leaving them with no doubt as to what went wrong. While the ride had multiple modifications in its lifetime,
There is no evidence that Dreamworld ever conducted a proper engineering risk assessment of the ride in its 30 years of commission.
and the 4 victims paid dearly for that. Mr McDougall detailed Dreamworld's many failures: shoddy record keeping, departments not sharing information, inadequate training for staff.
The general ignorance of proper safety and adequate assessments was a recurring theme throughout Dreamworld in many of the departments and reflects a system of failure to ensure.
The coroner concluded that the ride's safety systems were insufficient and described aspects of Dreamworld's maintenance and safety culture as inadequate. One of the most disturbing findings was how preventable the tragedy seemed. Evidence suggested that a basic water level detection system would have cost only a few $1,000s. In 2020, Dreamworld's parent company, Ardent Leisure, pleaded guilty to breaching workplace health and safety laws. The company was fined 3.6 million Australian dollars for exposing workers and guests to serious risks. The court found that the company had failed to eliminate or minimize risks associated with the ride. The judge described the company's failures as significant, saying the tragedy was foreseeable and preventable. Families of the victims spoke during the proceedings, describing the emotional and psychological toll the disaster had taken on their lives. They spoke of sleepless nights, of birthdays and holidays that would never feel the same again.
There had been close calls before. In 2001 and 2014, the fatal malfunction was the 3rd time the ride had stalled that day and the 5th that week.
It is clear from the expert evidence that at the time of the incident, the design and construction of the TRRR at the conveyor and unload area posed a significant risk to the health and safety of patrons.
The Thunder River Rapids ride was permanently shut down and later dismantled. It would never operate again. Dreamworld itself remained closed for about 6 weeks while every ride in the park underwent inspection and safety review. Before reopening, the park introduced stronger safety systems, improved staff training, and stricter operational procedures. But it did little to lift the negative image after the tragedy that had besmirched the park's name. Visitor numbers dropped sharply after the accident. Trust had been broken, and rebuilding it would take years. The Dreamworld disaster triggered national discussion in Australia about industry safety laws. Theme parks across Australia reviewed their own safety systems. Engineers and safety regulators studied the findings closely. The tragedy became a case study in how small mechanical failures combined with weak safety systems can lead to catastrophic outcomes. For the families involved, the tragedy didn't end with court rulings or fines. Every year on October 25th, the anniversary brings back painful memories. The 4 adults who died were parents, siblings, and partners. Their absence is felt every day by those who knew them. For many Australians, the Dreamworld accident remains a reminder that safety systems must never be treated as optional. A place designed for joy must be built on strong engineering, constant inspection, and clear emergency planning. The events of October 25, 2016 show how quickly normal life can change. A water pump failed, a raft became stranded, another raft collided. In seconds, 4 lives were lost. The ride had operated for 30 years. It was familiar, it seemed routine, yet hidden weaknesses existed beneath that routine. Dreamworld's darkest day isn't just a story about mechanical failure. It's about responsibility, oversight, and the cost of ignoring risk. Today, theme parks around the world use layered safety systems, automated shutdown mechanisms, and strict inspection standards. Those improvements are often written in the memory of tragedies like this one. The lesson here is simple but powerful. An environment's built for fun. Safety must never depend on luck.